It's time to summon the Tigerzord. As Season 2 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers continued, Tommy came back as the White Ranger, and with it, a brand new Zord to rival Jason's Red Dragon Thunderzord. I first got my deluxe White Tigerzord in the Christmas of 1995, which meant that we'd had 4 months with just the Thunder Megazord to play with. The new White Tigerzord brought a spate of new combinations to the table, and plus it was Tommy's Zord. Who doesn't love Tommy? Yes, Tommy was still rather popular. Slight confession time, this isn't actually my one. The box, orbs, sword and figure are, the big figure at least. Unfortunately, Yellow Tigerzord became a thing because I used to keep my Megazord toys in the window. A couple years ago there was an auction that was so cheap I just thought, you know what, let's replace it. The auction was missing all of its parts, so I was able to kind of Frankenstein them together. It's funny that with Tigerzord you've got a giant 8-inch figure and also a really tiny, like 16mm figure. In the spirit of this review and having filmed my Thunder Megazord video recently, I got on eBay and had a look for the White Ranger minifigure, found someone selling it quite nearby for very cheap, so I went for it. Super obvious part, stickers as usual. I will stop banging on about this because at some point Bandai do stop the madness with the lightning bolts. But unfortunately, that day is not today. The front of the Tigerzord is where all the differences have really happened. You can see them really clearly when you compare it to the Japanese release. But if that wasn't garish enough for you, when you extend them for Mega Tigerzord mode, it doesn't get any better. Oh, there they are. There's the lightning bolts. Something which I was happy about was that the lightning bolts that you can see on the shoulders of the Tigerzord on the box didn't seem to translate to the actual sticker sheet in the final product. However, does that mean that they recanted and went back to the Japanese versions? No. Don't be silly. No, they seem to be some kind of Bandai America interpretation of what was actually on the shoulders in the show. It's okay. We've made do. Another interesting difference was actually the paint. You'll see on this American version it's a very kind of bright white, but from what I've seen on the internet it looks like the Japanese release had a kind of speckled version. It almost looks like cookies and cream ice cream. Anyway, that's one thing that I don't think really matters so much, and indeed in the Legacy version, which came out a few years ago, they were still sticking with the bright white. What's the posability of this toy like, you ask? Well, pretty good to be fair. All 4 of the tiger's legs move, mostly because that's what the transformation demands of them. The tiger mouth opens and closes though, and that's quite a nice touch. Really, for what it is, it's pretty decent. And let's not forget the best part of this toy, the electronics. Insert a couple of AA batteries in the bottom and you gain access to 2 of the 90s finest sound effects. While the buttons are actually visible at all times because they're right above the tiger head, which is always visible in whatever mode you choose to use, it's not too bad, and to be honest you do kind of forget they're there most of the time. While the tiger mode is definitely a nice mode, and certainly the 6th Thunderzord, the transformation to warrior mode is actually pretty fun. I would say it's quite simple, but it's also very clever. Intuitive is probably the best word to describe it. I was able to give my yellow White Tigerzord to a 4-year-old, showed him the transformation one time and he was pretty much able to replicate it himself after that, save for a little bit of trouble with the legs and the feet, which, to be honest, used to stump me as well. Although the head is concealed, it's really easy to get out. And then when you're into the forearms, do you twist them or not? I used to think no, usually on the box they show them twisted. I like to have the White Tiger coin symbol showing, and so I quite liked to keep the forearms frontways, unless of course he's holding the sword, in which case you have to twist it. The sword, while we're on the subject, did suffer the same fate as the Thunder Megazord saber, that being the Japanese and the first US release were gold kind of chrome style. Subsequent releases in America and the only releases we had in England were the kind of bendy gold plastic style. Shame we missed out on that, it would have actually matched the trim around his head, and in fact his warrior mode helmet really quite nicely if they'd stuck with it. I also like that this is one of the only Zords where the sword is incorporated into the Zord mode. That's rare. Try and think of an example off the top of your head where the power sword is incorporated into the Zord mode. I'll wait. The only other example I can think of is Legendary Megazord or Go-Kai-O, where the swords form the front of the galleon. I really like that when they've thought everything through and all the pieces serve a secondary purpose. There was one thing in the box which was a little confusing, that being the 7th orb You see the red plastic orbs on his ankles and upper shoulders. Well, in the Japanese release, they actually had kanji printed on them. I think they were all different. I think they all possibly meant different kinds of attack. Haven't actually watched Die Ranger, so just basing this on speculation. But in both the Japanese and the American release, even though these were printed without the lettering on, you still got 7 of the red orbs. At the time, it just seemed like they were giving us a spare in case one fell off and got lost. But it does serve another purpose, in that it fits perfectly over the red orb in the Tigerzord's mouth, which lights up. I expect that in the Japanese release you could use the sound and light effects to illuminate the kanji. It's kind of lost on here a bit, but you could still pretend that maybe it's being fired out of the mouth. So as fun as Tigerzord is on his own, it's a lot more fun when you bring his friends in. Red Dragon, in his warrior mode, can ride it. It was seen a few times on the show, but not very well. I don't think this is really an official combination, but you can kind of pretend. And it's certainly a lot better than what you could do with the legacy versions. This one's a bit more fun. So not only did Tommy as White Ranger steal leadership of the team from Jason, he also took everyone else's Zords for his own transformation. The Mega Tigerzord is where it gets really interesting. Unlike Dragonzord in battle armor, Tommy even has a use for Kimberly's Zord this time, because Tigerzord actually came with a base plate and feet for the Firebird Zord. The transformation is again overall very satisfying, but with a few nitpicks, one of them being the kind of high grooves on the Tigerzord's knees, I guess, which stop the chest from snapping all the way back down, locking into place. It kind of has to rest on top of them. You can actually take off the battery compartment and that means it will shut all the way down. But the fact that they're there and serve no other purpose other than stopping the chest from locking all the way down must mean that it's meant to be there for screen accuracy, I guess. The Lion and the Firebird kind of swap prominence this time. The Lion's arms just sit up there like shoulder pads. The Thunder Megazord chest piece becomes like a back plate for the Tigerzord. And then you've got the Firebird, which is actually one of those kind of wussy combinations. What I mean by that is that it doesn't really match how well thought out and solid feeling the other combinations and clicks feel. In Power Rangers, a lot of the Zord transformations are very definite and very stable. Firebird's place in the Mega Tigerzord is treated more like a weapon. And just like all weapons, it has a very kind of tenuous grip on it. You just kind of slide the feet around the Tigerzord's fist and that's all that holds it in place. It does work, but it doesn't seem as ingenious as some of the other methods they've used. The feet used to kind of fall off a lot, the tail falls off even now. Mega Tigerzord gains a new face, or in this case a face plate, which swings around and covers the normal Tigerzord helmet. From owning the legacy version of this, it's actually made me realise something about the original that I never knew. That being that the faceplate can actually be pushed up, with some reluctance, to reveal a black eyeline bar. It's red on the legacy version. But it's a cool part, I never realised it was there before. It adds a bit more clearance to that helmet, and makes it look more in scale with the rest of the figure. What's cool about it being on this hinge joint sort of thing, is that you can raise it up to pretend that it's looking up, maybe at Serpentera. What's most impressive though is the stature of this thing. It's huge, it's solid, it's intimidating. Jason's over there seething that he didn't think to use his skirt as a missile. A little bit annoyingly, there's no room for the Thunder Megazord helmet anywhere on this combination. It just kind of sits towards side, along with the Thunder Megazord Power Sword. But all other parts get used. So who wore the Thunder Assault team better, Red Dragonzord or White Tigerzord? What do you think? I used to think Mega Tigerzord was the more impressive combiner, but now I'm not as sure because thinking about the centerpiece of the Zord, it's still exactly the same as it was in the Warrior mode. Whereas with Thunder Megazord, it all looks really quite different from the Zord modes. Compared to the Legacy version, it's pretty much a brick. But Tigerzord as a whole is a charming Zord addition, and certainly isn't as impractical in its Warrior mode as some Zords wind up being. This feels strange to say, but if you want one of your own, Bandai have just announced a Super Sentai Artisan release of DX1 Tiger, and that'll be following their Dai-Reno release at some point in the future. So expect again more painted on detail, probably some die-cast parts, but at its core it's still the original 90s version. So if you want to party like it's 1994, or 3, all over again, then Bandai are actually granting your wish. Thanks for your comments on my Thunder Megazord video, it was very helpful to get those corrections on the Zord names from the Japanese version. Did anyone notice that the helmet kept falling off, like a lot? That's another cool thing about the Super Sentai Artisan release of Daireno. It looks like the head can twist now, which means that the helmet could no way be connected by those two stupid, crummy side peg plates again. I wonder if they'll do it a bit like the Legacy version. I guess we'll see. Thanks again for watching. Do follow me on Instagram at PowerRangergram. I've just gone past 8,000 followers on that, which is very exciting. But we're also climbing the 200s in the subscribers over here, so I'm really happy about that as well. I've got some quite fun ideas to carry on with, as well as these ongoing chronological Zord reviews, so hopefully you'll be seeing a bit more stuff popping up quite soon. But until then, see you later.